and welcome to the latest episode of the Aviate with Ananya podcast. Today, we're thrilled to have with us Jill Hunter, a commercial pilot and captain with many years of experience under her belt. After changing her major in college and graduating with her CFI, Jill began her journey in commercial aviation and worked her way up to captain. Throughout her journey, she has also had to balance her career with being a mother, and we'll discuss some of her experiences and insights on that as well as a part of our Mother's Day special. Jill, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, Jill and I actually first met around 6 months ago last summer at the Fort Lauderdale Airport, and we just started talking about flight schools, the future of aviation, and here we are today.
Here we are. I'm glad we kept in touch.
Yes. Jill, you may not know this, but we were talking about women in aviation and just the organization in general. And because of my conversation with you, I actually joined our local Austin chapter. Am now a part of their team, the webmaster, and I actually had the president on a podcast episode just a few weeks earlier. So without you, none of that would have been possible.
It's such a good group, locally and nationally. And then if you ever get the chance, you got to go to a conference just because there's so much networking there. It's like Disney World for, aspiring pilots and people in aviation just in general. So,
Yeah, you're right. So let's start with our first question. How did you decide that you wanted to be a commercial pilot?
So I guess like growing up, I've always kind of just had that itch to fly and that desire to possibly fly one day. But when I was growing up, I didn't know how to get into it, how to start flying, how to become a professional pilot. And nobody that I knew closely was in aviation at all. So my girlfriend, her sister was an accounting major in college. I'm like, I guess I'll just do that. So I went to college and initially became a an accounting major. And then when I was sitting down to schedule my core classes for school, which would get you into like more of the major work that you would be majoring in, I just kind of was talking to her and she somehow mentioned flying and I'm going, well, where do you fly at? And she's like, here. I'm like, where? She's like, at Kent State. And that's where I ended up going to school. And I'm like, you fly here at the university. I was so confused. I didn't even know what she was talking about. She's like, yeah, we actually have our own airport, our own airplanes. And there's a whole course that you can do on it and you could actually major in it. So with hearing that, I was kind of like, all right, well, I guess I'll do that. And right then and there, I changed my major from intentionally in counting to flight technology. And then from then on out, it was history. So it was just kind of like always in the back of my head.
Yeah, that's really amazing. It kind of reminds me of how I spoke with you, learned all about all these opportunities, and through my school as well, ROTC, like they just open so many new doors that you've never thought possible. Yeah, moving on to the next question. What do you think is the most challenging aspect of being a commercial pilot?
Um, I guess it's just the responsibility. You kind of work day to day, just knowing that is in the back of your head. But when you really put into perspective, how many people truly are counting on you, it can weigh on you a lot. And meaning that you always want to be prepared. And this industry definitely trains you to be prepared.
So I know you started flying in college and you got your CFI through there. So I'm not sure how long ago that was, but I hope you don't take offense, but I'm just asking. How has the aviation industry changed since you first started flying?
So much. I started college in 2004 and I graduated in 2008. And at that point in time, hiring, um, it, it was steady. It wasn't what it is today, where hiring's just off the charts. So there was like a steady hiring, but back in 2008 when I graduated, the recession had hit and it hit the airlines so hard. At the time, the summer of 2008, when everything started kind of coming to fruition, the gas prices started going up and people were starting to get laid off. I remember doing an internship with ExpressJet, which is now out of business. But at the time, I was doing an internship with ExpressJet, and I remember somebody coming in with a sign saying, like, company offered leaves of absences are available. And that like kind of really hit me, like, oh geez, this industry is kind of taking a turn for the worse. And when I was doing that internship, I was unpaid. So I was kind of like gearing to go back to school and finish my last semester and finish my CFI. And I'm kind of scrambling, like, please, just any job I could get just to kind of go back into working a little bit while I still went to school. I was trying to find, because I knew like it was turning for the worse. So I saw that aspect of it, not directly affected by it with the airlines, but it was, a thought, like, okay, I can see the bad in this. And then there was just no hiring. There was no hiring to be had at all in 2008. So ideally speaking, I would have loved to have, more steady of a job, but I just took whatever I could. So I was flight instructing. I worked as a dispatcher at the Kent airport. I also worked as a customer service agent and FBO, just anything to kind of make ends meet. So some hours here, some hours there. That was where I started. And now looking at the industry, it is just off the charts with hiring. I mean, airlines are giving huge bonuses, and people are just really kind of setting themselves up for whatever they want to do and whatever airline they want to work for if they go that route. And it's pretty much laid out for them at this point. I've seen both highs and lows, and unfortunately this industry is very cyclical.
Yeah. Well, right now is a great time to be a pilot, I guess, though.
It really is. Yes.
Yeah. Being a pilot too has a lot of responsibility, a lot of schooling, a lot of training, and a lot of effort that goes into it. So I'd love to, if you could share with our listeners, how do you prepare for a flight as a captain, and what does a typical day look like?
It is a grind. Getting to the point, for example, where I am now, it was a lot of training, through upgrade training, different airlines. And even looking back through your certificates, it's just like everything is kind of like a stepping stone to get to the next step. So it's definitely a grind, and you can't let that, what's the word I'm looking for? You can't let those things go that you've learned along the way. It's all kind of like a building block.
Mm-hmm.
So getting ready for my days now, it's as simple as looking at the weather. I commute to work, so I'm based in Atlanta right now. So I kind of usually try to come in the night before, get enough rest, and I take like a shuttle from the hotel to the airport. And while I'm on the shuttle, I'm looking at the weather. I'm looking at the NOTAMs. I'm looking at turbulence forecasts, so I can brief my flight attendants when I get to the aircraft on if it's going to be bumpy or not. You're looking to see where your aircraft is. Is it at the gate? Is it on time? Is it running late? Kind of the status of the day. And then eventually, once you get to the airplane and you kind of get all the paperwork you need for your flight, you see if there's any what we call MELs, which are it's like a minimum equipment list of things that can be deferred on the airplane. But sometimes there's procedures that you have to follow with the MEL. So you're kind of getting into that mode, and then getting the airplane ready for a flight. And thinking about those things now, even as a private pilot, you do those things. Everything that you kind of learn from the get-go can follow your career all the way up to being an airline pilot, for example. So anyone just starting out, they're going to be doing the same things as we do, just in a different scale, I guess. So that's kind of cool to know, that the initial things you learn in flying are things that will carry through till the end, really.
Yeah, it's really interesting to think about. Yeah. Yeah, since we're moving towards Mother's Day as well, coming up soon, let's talk about how being a mother has impacted your perspective and your approach to your job as a pilot. So, how has being a mother really impacted your perspective, and how has your career impacted your experience being a mother?
Well, I had my daughter when I was in college, so it was kind of, and I was working on my commercial rating at the time. So I think I had just gotten my commercial rating. And after that, we were to be working on our CFI or our multi after that. So that was kind of our chain of events when I went to school. It was commercial, then you either went on to multi or CFI to finish up. And I had gotten my commercial certificate, I believe it was in October of 2006. And then I had my daughter in December of 2006. And it's like, okay, that can change your whole life, right? Which it did. But I had already gone so far with my ratings. It's kind of like, well, what do I do now? Do I just give up on everything that I worked for and a dream, or do I find a way to make it work? And it was definitely hard, and there's no doubt about it. I mean, waking up in the middle of the night to feed her, and then dropping her off at her grandparents on the way to a 7:30 a.m. class, an hour away from where I was living. So it was definitely tough. And then coming back from a day of school and picking her up and spending time with her, or even going to a second job, sometimes just to have a little bit of money. So, but it got to the point where it's like, all right, well, I'm kind of almost there, and it would be nice to have a degree, obviously. So I kind of just stuck with it just because I didn't know what else to do.
Yeah, and
And
you're like on the home stretch, ready to
yeah,
the
yeah.
finish line.
Like the tables could have been way different if I didn't have the help from her grandparents. So thank goodness for them. Both of them were super helpful. And then ever since then, I've been, a single mother. And it's kind of like, well, you have to provide for your child. So this is the way, this is my job, this is my skill, this is what I know how to do, and I have to provide. So it became very black and white. Like, I guess the old saying is when there's a will, there's a way. You'll figure it out. And it takes a village to raise a kid. And it's very true in my situation. But as time goes on and your schedule gets better, I try to make, days off a priority for sure, which it's so nice to be able to do that now and have, that good quality of time, because she only has 2 more years of school and then she's off to college. So it's like you want to make the most of what you have.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, well, Jill, thank you so much for speaking with me today on this special Mother's Day episode. We had the honor of speaking with Jill Hunter, a commercial pilot and captain who shared with us her inspiring journey. We hope her story has inspired all our listeners to reach for the skies, both figuratively and literally. So thanks once again for listening, and stay tuned for our next episode.